This video is going to pick up right where the previous video left off using the pixie dust function, and it's going to be all about trying to modify the table in R. So you can, of course, as we showed last video, take this table out of R and then modify it anywhere in Excel and Word, wherever you want. But we can also do it in R. And then also, while you're doing this, you can work with pipe operators a lot, which is a very useful general skill to have in R. A pipe operator is this symbol right here. It is a percentage sign, arrow, percentage sign. And what it does is it strings together multiple functions. So if you are familiar with ggplot uses these pluses after lines to kind of tell ggplot to keep looking at the next line for more information about what you want it to do. These pipe operators, just in general, mean keep looking for the next thing. And in the pixie dust thing, that they allow you to kind of do multiple operations on the table simultaneously. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, if you look at this table over here, these digits, there's way too many digits, so we need to round them. So to do that, you can use the sprinkle function. So the sprinkle function basically applies another function over a defined area. So we're going to set the columns to, and we're going to name three of the columns. We're going to name estimate, standard error, and statistic, because all of those need to be rounded. So we're basically saying, look in these three columns and then round them to 2 digits. So let's see what that ends up looking like. If you ever notice that there's all these blank things or whatever, I just do that because I make so many mistakes when I'm messing up these videos. So yeah, if you're making mistakes, if something's weird going on when you're trying it, you are not alone. I make mistakes constantly and am constantly messing things up and restarting these videos. So that's why it looks different than where we left off in the previous video. Anyway. You can see here that we've rounded all of these columns to 2 digits. Great, good start. Let's keep working on this table. So we're going to keep doing it. I changed the round to 3 here. I don't know why, it just happened. So we're going to add another pipe operator at the end of that. So this is basically the exact same thing we have up here. And then we're going to add another row. So we're going to sprinkle calls equal p-value. So now we're looking in the p-value column. And then we're just going to call this little function on it. This function basically tells it to make it more like a p-value. So if you look over to the right here in the table we had before, you can see that the p-value is listed as 0. Well, we know that p can never be 0 because, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. So when we run this function on p-value column, it just makes it look like a p-value should. It turns it into less than 0.001, which is what you want your p column to say instead of something like 0 or some really long number. So you don't really need to worry about all of this. Just know that if you copy and paste that as a function on a p-value, and it would be this much of that function, that if you just copy and paste that into there, it will come out like this, which is great. You know, you can get really tied up trying to figure out every little bit of syntax in R, but sometimes you can just be like, okay, I'll just copy and paste that and not worry too much about it because it might not be necessary for you to really understand it too deeply. So don't be afraid if you don't understand everything, that's fine. I'm not even sure if I really get this one, honestly. So just keep stringing together pipe operators. And let's start working on the column names. You can see the column names over here are not quite right. They're not all there. So let's change the column name. So we're going to sprinkle call names. That just means you're going to change the column names. It's going to look for column names and change them. So we're going to take term and just capitalize it. We're going to take the p-value and make that look a little bit more spruced up. Standard error equals SE. You need to make sure that you're putting the equal sign and then putting whatever you want to replace it with in quotes. And then statistic with T statistic, which is what we want, and estimate is coefficient. So this is kind of more standard language, it's just better language, and let's see what it looks like when we run this. Okay, now it actually looks like we've got a pretty decent table here. We've got most of it together. So now we want to actually do the same thing we did above when we printed this table, and we're going to sprinkle print method this in HTML. So I'm going to create a new object with this big old function that we've been messing around with, and I'm going to call it base table 2. And I'm going to run it. So I created the base table object. The next thing we need to do is we need to print out base table 2. And then boom, we have that a lot closer. We can just highlight that, copy it, and then you can see that it looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer, and this is not the limit of what the pixie dust functions can do. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with them, but you could produce a fully APA table in R if you want. But this, gets you a little bit closer and kind of is an introduction so that you can mess around with it too. Don't be afraid to look up online resources about it because it's a pretty cool package that has a lot of capabilities. So yeah, thanks for watching this series, and good luck.